to go to school as a young boy. As a matter of fact, he would sometimes take castor oil to get sick, so that his mother would keep him in the house, so he wouldn't have to go to school. But he was actually very learned. At the age of 6 years, he began studying Sanskrit and began writing verses. And it's interesting that his son also, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, at a very early age, began composing verses, Sanskrit verses. But at 6 years old, he was already studying Sanskrit. I don't know how old Abhay is, but he's got a little while, another year and a half to go. But very learned, and although again very frail, was very studious, very scholarly in his studies. He became well known as knowing both East and Western philosophies. It's not that he just studied the Vedic texts, but he also studied Western literatures, Christianity, Islam, with the idea of being able to preach to them. And he also taught his son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he also trained him up in the same mood, with the idea again of being able to preach to the people in general, not to a certain group of individuals or even in a particular locale. He knew many different dialects within the country of India, and again even wrote literatures that made it to the West. We know this. We know the history of how I think it was the Lord Chaitanya, the precepts of Lord Chaitanya ended up in McGill University, is it, in Canada? So it was he was certainly very intelligent. At the age of 12, it's described that he entered into household life. He was married at the age of 12. But he describes it as a baby doll marriage, because at that age he couldn't live with his then wife, who was only 5. So he moved in with his in-laws, but the nanny had to come from the house and lived with him in the house of the in-laws. A very interesting experience. Although he doesn't comment much about it, he was a little dubious about the arrangement. We know from Vedic history that this is done according to astrology, right? That one finds his mate according to astrological readings. So this was also the arrangement, but he was a little dubious about the whole arrangement. But still, he at a very early age he was married, lived in the house of his in-laws, and then eventually at around 18 or so, he began his higher studies. He went to college, and again progressed very nicely in his preaching and his studies, and to the point where at the age of 20, he was given this honorary title of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This was given to him by the Gaudiya Goswami Sabha, which had a sort of a gathering. And at this gathering, all of the learned scholars of Navadvip, Nadia area, came together, and they presented him with this honorary title of Bhaktivinoda, knowing again that this young man, he's very exceptional in his studies and in his preaching activities. So this went on for some time. He again continued with his studies, but then eventually he got a post. I'm just sort of condensing all of this because of time. But he eventually got a post to be the magistrate in Jagannath Puri, to oversee the temple's operations. And next to the king, this was the most important post. So you can imagine that although he was managing the temple, he was also overseeing many of the activities that go on in the Orissa area, Jagannath Puri Mandir area. And the king, seeing his proficiency in management, empowered him. It's described that his work schedule was, and his efficiency in his work was compared to 5 men. He was so efficient in his work. He would rise early, sleeping only sometimes 4 hours. He would rise early. He would do his sadhana, and then he would begin some of his writing. He would go off to the office, so to speak, and he would sit at his chair as a magistrate for some 3 hours daily, and then in that short amount of time, he would do the work of 5 men. He was so efficient in his judgments. When people would come in, he would immediately deal with their situation and go off. And then he would take his break and go home again and continue with his writings. We all know there were some famous exchanges that he had with various dacoits, or questionable people in the Orissan area. There was Bhikshakshena, and there was another yogi who claimed to be Mahavishnu. There was another yogi who claimed to be Ramchandra. There was constant like this, dealing with sahajiyas, persons who were misrepresenting the Vaishnava philosophy. And as a result, it got a bad impression. The general populace looked down upon Vaishnava studies as being sahajiya. So he had a great mission in mind to reawaken or reestablish the Vaishnava perception in greater society. And with that, he began to write many literatures. That was his main medium, you could say, to approach and present Krishna consciousness, was his writing of literatures. And we can see that also, that's something that Srila Bhaktivinoda imbibed from his father, the mood of producing literatures and preaching. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was so instrumental in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's life that when he passed, and then Gaura also passed, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta became very melancholy. He didn't want to go out and continue with his preaching work. He became, not to say that he was discouraged, but he became very melancholy, that I don't want to have to deal with this conflict or this struggle, this uh, fighting that has to go on in trying to present Krishna consciousness until Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji, the Goswamis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Panchatattva all appeared to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta in a dream and told him that no, you need to continue with your preaching work and we'll be there to support you. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was such an instrument in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's life. And we're also seeing that practically in our Krishna consciousness movement, that from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta to Srila Prabhupada, this mood of wanting to distribute Krishna consciousness through a production of literature and preaching was very, very, and we can see to today, is paramount in spreading Krishna consciousness. And we also have that responsibility to imbibe that same mood. Srila Prabhupada comments, I think it's in the Nectar of Devotion, he says it's the duty of the disciple to accept or to develop the mood of the spiritual master. So just as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was instrumental and empowered by Krishna to come and preach, it's described that he was in the spiritual world, he's described as one of the Manjari helpers to Rupa Manjari, one of the assistants to Rupa Manjari, who we know is the most intimate servant to Vishaka Devi Dasi, the intimate associates of Chaitanya, Lord Krishna. So all of this is quite interesting how it's filtering down to a present day Krishna consciousness movement, how we have a great responsibility to imbibe that same preaching and desire to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. I know today is his disappearance day, so we wanted to skip forward a little bit. Again, we've heard many things about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life and how instrumental he was in establishing Krishna consciousness, but we wanted to read something about his last days. After taking to the renounced order of life, the Thakur accepted some disciples, and one of them, Krishnadas Babaji, continued to serve him as he had in Jagannath Puri. Feeling a strong desire to be fully absorbed in the spiritual plane, the Thakur shut himself up in Bhakti Bhavan, which was his residence, in the year 1910, so that he could remain uninterruptedly engaged in the divine service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. Feigning paralysis before the eyes of common people, he entered into a state of total samadhi. So he did this for some 4 years. He feigned paralysis and just simply lay there. And so that on June 23rd, 1914, the sun began its southern course. It was the same day that Gadadhar Pandit, the incarnation of Srimati Radharani, had left the world some 450 years before. Interesting how that's so related. Today is also the disappearance of Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit is different from Gadadhar Das. Gadadhar Das is described as the incarnation of the opulence or the effulgence of Radharani, whereas Gadadhar Pandit is actually her divine self, Srimati Radharani. Precisely at noon, the Thakur entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord, far beyond the vision of the conditioned souls of this world. The Thakur's Samadhi ceremony was delayed until the sun began its northern course. At that time, his last remains were taken from the Bhakti Bhavan and brought to his home in Godrum Dweep. We wanted to, I guess we don't really have the time, but there's a beautiful, beautiful song that he writes about his home, Godrum Dweep. And this is contained in another literature that I have here. I'll read a couple verses from it, but it's a beautiful, beautiful description of Godrum. There they were placed in a silver urn and buried in the midst of a huge kirtan and festival held in his honor by his disciples and friends. Hundreds took part, and his direct presence was experienced by everyone. Truly, the Thakura's stanza composed in glorification of Srila Haridas Thakur applies to him. He wrote, "He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die. Thou art living still, when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy life around." To spread a holy life around. So I wanted to read just a couple verses from this beautiful song written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If I can find it. Does anyone want to share some nectar about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as I'm trying to find this beautiful song? Oh, here it is. It's called Sri Godrum Chandra Bhajanon Padesh. This song is, it's actually a song, and I'm sure some devotees have heard it. There's a very nice tape of one devotee singing this song, but the melody is very, very simple. I'll just sing the first verse here, and then we'll skip to a couple of the verses here. The song goes, Yadi te haripada saroja shuddha rasapana param hridayam satatam parihritya griham kali bhavamayam bhaja godruma kanana kunjavidhum. The verse is, if your heart wishes to always drink the nectar of Hari's lotus feet, then abandon your home which is filled with the spirit of Kali and worship the moon of Godrum's forest. Give up all your desires for sense enjoyment. Give up the idea that you are identical with the Lord. Abandon both auspicious and inauspicious works. Only worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers with acts compatible with his pleasure and by serving those dear to him. Become fixed in the religion of serving the servants of Hari. Be fixed in drinking the nectar of the holy names. Always be fixed in respect, humility, and compassion. Worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers. Sing the names of Yadava, Madhava, Krishna, and Hari. Sing the names of Rama, Janardhan, and Keshava. Always sing the names of the dearest Lord of the daughter of Vrishabhanu. Worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers. Sing the name of the Lord in the forests by the Jamuna banks. Sing the name of the sun that lights up the gardens of Gokula. Sing the names of Gaur Hari, the alchemist of sacred rapture. Worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers. Go live in Gauranga's forest with its 9 divisions. Study Gaur Hari's life. Roll about in the dust by the banks of the Ganges marked with Gauranga's footprints, and worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers. Remember always the enchanting pastimes of Gaur Gadadhar. Become a follower of Gaur Gadadhar. Always listen to the enchanting topics of Gaur Gadadhar. Worship the moon of Godrum's forest bowers. Those are just a few of the verses that are part of this song. But it's really, really a beautiful, beautiful composition. And he mentions Gaur Gadadhar. If you go to the Yoga Pit, you'll see a beautiful altar there with Gaur Gadadhar. Gadadhar, again, because we know Gadadhar is the Srimati Radharani herself, and she appeared in Chaitanya Lila as part of the Panchatattva. There's a short, very brief description of Gadadhar Pandit that I have here, and we'll just read a little something about it. Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami was born in the village of Belati in the Chittagong district of modern Bangladesh on the dark moon day of the month of Vaishak. His father was Madhava Mishra, a Virendra Brahman in the Kashyapa Gotra, and his mother Ratnavati Devi. He also had a younger brother named Baninath. The family remained in Belati Gram until Gadadhar was 12 and then moved to Nabadweep. Gadadhar Pandit was a brahmachari for his entire life. Indeed, his indifference to the pleasures of the world was such that Ishvara Puripad was very impressed when he visited Nabadweep. Ishvara Puri gave Gadadhar instruction in a book he had himself written, which is called the Krishna Lilamrita. While Mahaprabhu was delighting in his pastimes as a student, there was no scholar in the entire town of Nabadweep who was unafraid of entering into debate with him. And this is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how he also had an exchange with Gadadhar Pandit, and asking him to give the definition of liberation. That discussion is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And after his answer, Gadadhar answered according to the Nyaya philosophy that liberation constituted or consisted in the final and absolute eradication of all miseries. Lord Chaitanya went on to defeat him, and after that exchange, Gadadhar Pandit became very, very much attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and became his ardent follower. Gadadhar Pandit, though, was actually is described to be a very close follower to Lord Nityananda. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Puri, Gadadhar Pandit went there as well, as did so many of the other Vaishnavas. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to leave Puri and go to, I believe it was Vrindavan, right? Gadadhar Pandit wanted to come along and followed him for some distance. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted him to stay there, and he accepted that instruction and made Puri his residence. Kshetra Sannyas told him to stay there in Puri and continue the mission. Although he tried his best to stay with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and finally when they went to, I forget what city it was, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that Gadadhar was there, he ordered him again that you go back to, I don't remember the exact, if anyone knows the details, but there was some discussion between the two of them. And Mother Karuna? Yeah. He stayed on to worship Toda Gopinath. It's Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami remained on this earth for only 11 months after Mahaprabhu's disappearance. In Bhakti Ratnakara, Narahari Chakravarti has described the terrible suffering of Gadadhar Pandit in Mahaprabhu's separation. He remained alive only in order to be able to see Srinivasacharya. This is from the Bhakti Ratnakara. It states, repeating the name of Gaurasundar with his eyes closed, his sighs were as hot as flames. No one but the Lord can know how Gadadhar Pandit suffered in the absence of Gauranga. His motionless body remained alive only so that he could bestow his mercy on Srinivas Acharya. Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami disappeared at Puri on the dark moon day of Shrestha, or Jyeshta, in 1456. So he was approximately 49 years old when he left his body, shortly after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami Ki Jai. Any questions or comments? Do we have time still, or? Well, let's sing one more quick song before we go off to, since there's no prasadam, before we go off to our engagements today. Let's sing Jeev Jago. It's a beautiful song that most people know. So I think you'll have to turn around again to, for those who need to follow the word. This is part 2 of what's called the Arunadaya Kirtan. The first part is a 1-2, which is Udila Aruna Puramabhagi, which is a little bit challenging for most to follow, but the second part is much easier. It's a 1-2-3 beat. Ji jago, Gaura Chandra bole. Ji jago, Ji jago, Gaura Chandra bole. Kota nidraya o maya pisachira kole. Kota nidraya o maya. Kota nidraya o maya pisachira kole. Bhajiva boliya aise sansara vitare. Bhajiva boliya aise Bhajiva boliya aise sansara vitare. Rohile tumi avidyara vare. ভুলিয়া রইলে তুমি অবিদ্যার বরে তোমারে লইতে আমি হইনু অবতার তোমারে তোমারে লইতে আমি হইনু অবতার আমি বিনা বন্ধু কে আছে তোমার আমি বিনা বন্ধু কে আছে তোমার এনেছে ঔষধি মায়া নাচিবার লাগি এনেছে ঔষধি মায়া নাচিবার লাগি Hari Nama Mantra Lao Tumi Magi Hari Nama Mantra Lao Tumi Magi Bhaktivinoda Prabhu Charane Padiya Bhaktivinoda Prabhu Charane Padiya Say Hari Rama Mantra Loilo Magiya Say Hari Rama Mantra Loilo Magiya Lord Gauranga is calling, wake up, sleeping souls, wake up, sleeping souls. You have slept so long on the lap of the witch Maya. You came into this world of birth and death, saying, my Lord, I will certainly worship you. But you have forgotten this promise and remained in great ignorance. I have descended just to save you, except for me, who is your friend. I have brought the medicine to eradicate the disease of illusion. Now pray for this Hari Nam Maha Mantra and take it. Bhaktivinoda fell at the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga, and after begging for the holy name, he received that Maha Mantra. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.